Hello and welcome everyone to the Polity Primer series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pragya, and in today's episode of Polity Primer as well as in upcoming episodes, we are going to discuss the supreme law of the land, the fundamental principles on which our country is made. Yes, you are guessing it right. We are going to discuss the Indian Constitution. So the title of our today's discussion is Making of the Indian Constitution. In this discussion, we are going to study firstly about what is a constitution. Okay. We are going to see the making of the Indian Constitution. We are going to study about what was the Constituent Assembly that was responsible for drafting our Indian Constitution. We are also going to see what was debated as a part of the Constitutional Assembly debates. We are also going to see that how our Indian Constitution is a living document, and in the end, we are going to see a practice question for your prelims examination and a practice question for your mains examination. So, if I talk about the background of our today's topic, recently on November 26th, we have observed the Constitution Day. Constitution Day. It is also known as the National Law Day. National Law Day. And if I talk about it in Hindi, then it is also known as the Samvidhan Divas. And this day is celebrated, this day is observed to understand the importance of our Indian Constitution, or to mark the drafting of our Indian Constitution or the enforcement of our Indian Constitution. So this day becomes very important for us. Okay, so this brings us to the moot question of our today's discussion, that what is a constitution? So if I talk about what is a constitution as a document, not only the Indian Constitution, but constitution as a document, it is the fundamental principles on which a state is governed. It is a sort of a rule book for a state. See, without constitution, it is very difficult to determine that how will the country be governed, because constitution sets out the establishment of parliament, establishment of various constitutional posts, establishment of state governments if they are states in the country. So it is very important for the efficient functioning of the country. So that is why it is known as the fundamental principle on which the country is governed. A constitution is central to the administration of the country and to the existence and functioning of a country as a politico-legal entity. And having a constitution is very important in effective governance of the country. Now let us understand what was the Constituent Assembly that was responsible for the drafting of the Indian Constitution, and whose idea was it to have a constitution in the very first place. So if I talk about the person who conceived the idea firstly of having a constitution, he was Indian revolutionary M.N. Roy, also known as the father of Indian communism. Okay, so it was in 1934 that the idea of a Constituent Assembly for India was put forward for the first time by M.N. Roy, a pioneer of the communist movement in India. So he conceived the idea that yes, we should have a constitution to govern ourselves. Moving forward, in 1935, the Indian National Congress for the first time officially demanded a Constituent Assembly to frame the Constitution of India. This demand was made because we wanted an Indian version of the Constituent Assembly with Indian members in it. Okay, we did not want the Britishers to form our constitution, and that is why the Indian National Congress demanded the formation of a Constituent Assembly. And this declaration of having a Constituent Assembly was made in the year 1938. This declaration was finally accepted in the year 1940 through August offers. But due to the objection of Muslim League, that time it was having some controversy. So what happened in 1942? Finally, the Constituent Assembly was agreed to by the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, and they decided that yes, we are going to have only one Constituent Assembly that is going to draft our Indian Constitution. So the Constituent Assembly was the body meant to draft the Constitution of India. Initially, it had 389 members. However, after independence and the partition of India, the strength was reduced to 299 members. Members were chosen by indirect election by the members of the provincial legislative assemblies, and they followed a system of universal adult franchise. Universal adult franchise to choose the members. If you talk about the Constituent Assembly, it had 8 committees. 8 core committees that helped in the drafting of the Indian Constitution. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee. Okay, so now let us discuss what was actually debated as a part of Constitutional Assembly debate. So if I talk about what was actually debated as a part of the Constitutional Assembly debates, many such issues were debated. Firstly, who are going to be the citizens of India? How are we going to form the Indian states? Who will decide the boundaries of the states, and how is the parliament going to function? How are we going to function the state legislative assemblies? So all of these fundamental issues were discussed as a part of the Constitutional Assembly debates. Not only this, the fundamental rights, DPSPs, and other such pertinent issues which will come, like our for the fathers of our Indian Constitution were very far sighted, so they could see that what was going to the consequence of having an Indian Constitution. They were very far sighted and they were aware of the issues that could crop up. So all of these fundamental issues, like the establishment of a parliament, the establishment of states, the establishment of state legislatures, the establishment of certain constitutional posts such as the president of the state, India, and the governor of the states were discussed as a part of the Constitutional Assembly debates. Okay, so the drafting committee chaired by Ambedkar, B.R. Ambedkar, was one of the over 17 committees of the Constituent Assemblies. Now this brings us to the question that is our Constitution a living document, and why do we say that our Indian Constitution is a living document? So if I talk about the Constitution as a living document, when we were having a debate on the Constitution and the framing of the Constitution, so we were also discussing that whether Constitution should be a static document or a dynamic document. So the members were divided on this issue, and they were also divided on the issue of how the Constitution is to be amended. So if I talk about our Indian Constitution is not a static document, it is a very dynamic document, and this has also been pointed out by our first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru that no, we cannot have a static constitution because our society is ever changing. It is very dynamic in nature, and if the constitution becomes outdated, the people are not going to obey the constitution. So he was in favor of having a constitution as a living document, as a dynamic document which caters to the changing times of the society. So just like a living human being, the Indian Constitution grows and changes over time. The Constitution is therefore seen as a living document. It is not static in nature, because a static Constitution would have meant that we are stopping the progress of the nation. Okay, so the Indian Constitution is called a living document because it can be amended or changed. So amendments form an important part of the Indian Constitution, and that is why we are saying that Constitution is a living document. So when this amendment was discussed in the Constitution Assembly, what happened was many people were saying that we should make it as a easy process, so that the Constitution can, like UK Constitution, which is developed through judicial precedents, our Constitution can also adopt to changing times by making simple amendments. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar argued that no, we need to put some checks and balances on the amending power of the parliament, else they are going to utilize it by on their own free will, on their own whims and fancies. So this process of amendment was highly debated in the Constituent Assembly. When it came to the nature of the Constitution and how amendments to it would be made in the future, there was a debate that was going on in the Constituent Assembly, as I have explained to you before also. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was always in favor of the amendment of the Constitution. He was very far-sighted. He knew about the issues that could crop up in the upcoming times in India, and that is why he said that we need to have a amending provision in the Constitution. But he was against that we should be making Indian constitution easily amendable. No, he was not in favor of that, because most of the members were in favor of amending the constitution through a simple majority. But he said no, we need to put checks and balances on the amending power of the parliament. He gave examples of procedures for amendments in the Irish, Canadian, Australian and other constitutions to make a point about how there was no one way of making amendments. So this led to the birth of 3 types of amendments in our Indian constitution, that is the amendment by simple majority, amendment by special majority, and amendment which requires ratification of states. Okay, so we have discussed all of these types of amendments which require simple, special and ratification by states in our lecture of amendment to our Indian constitution. So it was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar who said that no, constitution should not be left to be amended by simple majority. We should have varying degrees that are required to amend our Indian constitution, because it would put checks and balances on the parliament powers of amendment. So this amendment or the changes that we can make in our Indian constitution makes it a very dynamic document. It makes it a living document, and amendments help the constitution to adapt itself as per the changing times. Okay, so that is why our constitution is not a static document. It is a very living kind of document, just like human beings. It also changes itself as per the changing times. With this, we come to a conclusion of our today's discussion. We have seen what is a constitution. We have also seen what was the Constituent Assembly, and we have also seen what were the arguments in favor of having a constitution as a living document, because constitution is not only a tool for administration, it represents the will of the people. It represents what people want. It represents the issues, social issues that are already present in the society and which might also crop up in the future. And if you talk about the purposive interpretation of the constitution that the Supreme Court is currently following, if you talk about the latest judgment, for example, right to privacy, for example, right to have a life partner, for example, the wide interpretation that is given by the Supreme Court to Article 21, for example, decriminalization of adultery as an offense. So what is all of this? This is the dynamism, internal dynamism that is present inherently in our Indian constitution. And that is why it is a living document, because it is not just a document that helps in administration of a state. It also helps in social reforms, and it is a very important social tool in the hands of the parliament. Now let us see a practice question for your prelims examination. So the question is, what was the exact constitutional status of India on 26 January 1950? And this is a PYQ that has been asked in the year 2021. Your option A is a democratic republic. Your option B is a sovereign democratic republic. Your option C is a sovereign secular democratic republic. And your option D is a sovereign socialist secular democratic republic. Kindly drop your answers in the comment box below. Now let us see a practice question for your mains examination. So the question is, the constitution is not merely a lawyer's document, it is a vehicle of life and its spirit is always the spirit of age. Explain. So firstly you will write what is a constitution, then you will discuss how our Indian constitution was formed, what was the Constituent Assembly, and then you will come to the point that where we consider our Indian constitution as a living document. You will write that why was it required, what was the need to have this internal dynamism in our Indian constitution, and then you will elaborate as per Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. A constitution is not merely a lawyer's document, it is a fundamental living document. It is a vehicle of life and its spirit is always the spirit of age. It can change itself from changing times, adapt itself as per the changing time, and you can conclude very holistically. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding this session, kindly drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such updates. The PDF of this session is available in the Telegram group, the link of which I place in the description. You can download it from there. Thank you.